for this wonderful event. I'm Erin Debenport, the Interim Director of the American Indian Studies Center here at UCLA. And on behalf of myself, Director Shannon Speed, and the rest of our center staff, I want to both welcome you and recognize that as a land-grant institution, UCLA acknowledges the Gabrielino Tongva peoples as the traditional land and language caretakers of Tovangar. This is the land that includes the Los Angeles Basin and South Channel Islands. We are grateful to have the opportunity to work in this place for the Tarashatam, indigenous peoples in Tongva. We pay our respects to Hanukvatam, the ancestors and elders, and Ayohinkam, our relatives and relations past, present, and emerging. I know that many of us here today live on other unceded lands, so I invite you to also consider the original caretakers of the lands and indigenous languages where you are from or where you now live. It is my pleasure to now introduce my colleague, Pamela Peters, the events coordinator for the American Indian Studies Center. Pamela?
Just also would like to acknowledge the Tongva people as the traditional caretakers of this land called Tovangar, otherwise known as Los Angeles. I know I'm a visitor here on Tovangar, as my homeland is the Navajo Nation, but for the time being, this is where I call home at the moment. I want to welcome everyone to this event, and I'm going to do a brief introduction of our moderator, and she's going to take over after I give a brief introduction of who she is. So Joy Holland is our librarian at the UCLA American Indian Studies Center Library. Joy is non-native. She was raised in Hawaii and is working in areas of community collections, indigenous librarianship, and museum archives and collections. She previously served her community as executive director of Kona Historical Society, a multi-site Smithsonian affiliated museum in Hawaii. She has served on a variety of boards and panels, including Hawaii Council for the Humanities, Hawaii State Foundation on Culture and the Arts, Association of Hawaii Archivists, and is currently the advisory board chair for LACMA and a project advisory board member at the Autry Museum pertaining to Pacific and Indigenous collections, repatriations in collections. Joy's research and writing focuses on a variety of issues in Indigenous collection spaces, including what constitutes academic or reliable resources in Native and Indigenous studies scholars. Please welcome Joy Holland.
Thank you so much. I'm so thrilled to be here today with these two talented artists that you're about to hear from. We are fortunate that we are able to see the lens of their humor, their satire, their incisive commentary on world affairs. This event we entitled Cartoons, Satire, and the Lens of Indian Country on the World. And we're looking forward to a conversation after their presentations where they'll give us a brief overview on their work, their methodology, their approach to satire, and looking at the world and Indian country around them. I wanted to just emphasize too that we're going to have an opportunity for people to ask questions. You can feel free to put those questions in the comments. You can also pose those questions yourself after our moderated discussion. So we'll have two presentations, a discussion, and then a Q&A in which you're welcome to pose your questions. So without further ado, and expressing that I'm a complete fangirl of both of these gentlemen, I'm first going to introduce Mr. Marty Two Bulls Sr. He is an Oglala Lakota, originally from the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation in South Dakota. He started drawing editorial cartoons for Rapid City Central High School newspaper as a hobby, but within a few years, the hobby turned into a career. His work has appeared in the Rapid City Journal, the Argus Leader, Indian Country Today, Mandan Hidatha Arikara Times, News from Indian Country, Go Comics, and the Andrews McMeel Universal Syndicate. His work has recently been honored with a Pulitzer Prize nomination. So please welcome him, and we look forward to hearing about his work.
Hello. Well, hello, hi. I just like to say right now I'm in South Dakota, but normally I'm in Santa Fe and work back and forth. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. I started my career in 1983 working for, well, I'm a designer. I'm a working artist, and I do editorial cartoons on the side, and cartooning generally on the side. It amuses me. So I tend to do it to pass time and basically for my people, Oglala Lakota. So consequently, most of the publications that I'm in is centered around Pine Ridge, or near Pine Ridge. And the national interest and stuff is just kind of a bonus. But the works appeared all over the place, internationally, nationally, through major publications, Wall Street Journal, New York Times, things like that. But I think I like it best that it appears locally in Lakota Times. You know, it's just a small newspaper. My publisher runs it out of her house and still delivers newspapers, and it just gets out to the people. So they can see the slideshow now. So basically, this is some of the work I've started. We'll be going to what's called strip cartooning. This is a comic that was made that I used to do about my daughter when she was little. Now she's in her 30s, but when she was small, I did this comic, and these are called comic strips. And so these appear in the comic section of the newspaper. And if you go to the second one, it's another example as she got older. Let's see. Oh, it's out of order. This next. Is it back again? Yeah, it's kind of out of order. This is Res Dogs. This is actually a comic strip I've done more recently, and it started out as a political cartoon strip, but now it's a more of a family strip. Now it kind of developed into that, you know. So if we go to the next slide. This is back to Dee's again. As soon as she's a little bit older. As it were, this was a family strip. So, you know, basically about her adventures. A lot of it's true. This is actually a true story here. Well, if you can go to the next slide. And this is back to Res Dogs again. This is more, the Prairie Dogs kind of developed into more of a family type thing. And the dog has a more prominent part in it. The next strip. And this is Tabloka. Tabloka is a Lakota word that means bull, which is basically the spirit of the comic. It's a bunch of bull. And so it's a more based on like Western Indian interaction, historical kind of thing. And this is called a gag strip. So it's just a one box gag, sometimes two, like in this panel here. You go to the next one, next slide. Here's another Tabloka. And like I said, these are gag cartoons. These appear in the comic section of the page. So these I just do for the fun of it. You know. Next slide. And this is COVID-19. It's another gag strip that I did about the pandemic. And basically, it's almost up to 204, which is when I'll cut it off after 2 years. And next strip. And it's all mixed up here, but this is a editorial cartoon honoring John Harrington, the first Native American in space. I tend to not like titles like First American to do this or First American to do that, but in this situation, this is really something special. So I thought it deserved an editorial cartoon. And this is an ink with a watercolor wash. So it's a little bit more realistic. The next slide. And this is an early editorial cartoon from 2003 about blood quantums, which is something that affects all Native Americans. At some point, we're all going to be bred out of existence, basically. Some tribes more sooner than others, depending on when the European contact was. But this comic strip is still being requested by different people to put in books and whatnot to illustrate their points. Next slide. This is the first COVID-19 one, you know, the freelance artist before COVID-19 and the freelance after. It, basically, my life didn't change too much. Okay, next slide. And this is about the Lakota religion. The traditional Lakota religion is oftentimes used and abused and sold to basically by non-natives, you know. So this is kind of a parody, bringing out some of those issues. Next slide. And of course, this is about disenrolling. How they're disenrolling, they're taking tribal members from the past and disenrolling them so they get rid of modern, you know, their descendants and all their descendants from the tribal roles. So it's almost like the tribal attorney has a time machine. I kind of wanted to show that in a more humorous way, you know. Next slide. And this is Chief Enowick, who was University of Illinois' mascot for years. They finally got rid of him, so this was to celebrate that point. And he's finally in the past with all the other, hopefully all the other mascots. Yeah. Next slide. And this is everything that makes America great was stolen from the native. And this is from a photograph that I actually found. This guy was wearing sunglasses, and I just thought it was so neat. He was a native that was around during the, you know, Custer battles, whatnot. And so he was photographed at a gathering up in the Black Hills. So I just liked the way he looked. So I reproduced him and used this as a graphic. Next slide. And this is basically about war criminals in history, biological warfare, Lord Jeffrey Amherst. Some people call him Lord Smallpox because he was the one that really got credit for using blankets and whatnot to infect Indians and basically get rid of them. Next slide. Next one. And these are more political aspects. This is for the No DAPL protest up north. And I did these to kind of promote or give people a sense of pride about what they're doing up there. You know, if we go back to that other slide too, Water's Life, that's on the same thing. So I just did these to try to tell people that, you know, hey, the world's watching, or the world needs to watch. In this case, they sick dogs on some women up there, and it just struck me as, you know, geez, didn't we go through this in the civil rights movement, you know? And so just trying to illustrate that point as well. You know, next slide. And this is about, this is just poking fun at marijuana use. There was a news article I saw. So this actual headline says, frequent marijuana use linked to issues later in life. Weed users found it to have poor verbal memory of middle age. And people who read this all kind of have trouble saying the word after that. Next one. And this is a more recent one about the COVID and how there's more waves of this stuff coming. That we should stay diligent even after everything that's going on. Is there a next one, or is that the end? And there's some place you can find my work.
We're doing great on time, Marty. If you want to keep talking, it's up to you.
Okay. Well, basically, a lot of the editorial cartoons are the opinion of the newspaper. So in the past, I used to work in newspapers. I worked as a graphics editor for the Rapid City Journal in Rapid City and the Sioux Falls Argus Leader, the two largest publications in South Dakota. So part of that job was I had to write editorials. And I found that people don't read those things, but they do read an editorial cartoon. And so I started doing that in the forefront, because I have opinions and I want them out there, and it's just a good tool for me. Like I said before, I'm an artist. I paint, I sculpt, and I do this because it's fun. The day it stops being fun is the day I'll stop doing it. But it's all just part of the job in the past. For some reason, as an artist, I ended up in newsrooms. I ended up on, terrible stories. I often find myself in front of a fire or a building's burning or something. I keep thinking, oh, I'm an artist. What am I doing here? But it's strange how fate kind of puts you in different places. And so through those experiences, it helped temper my view on the news and my view on current topics.
Because he doesn't know us.
Yeah.
You mean like giving away? He doesn't know.
But someone's on.
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh. Anyway, it's just a place to get my opinion out. So when I start these things, I start the news cycle, and I look at all the stories of the day, and that's usually on a Friday. I'll do the sketches, I'll do the drawings, and I'll get it done by Saturday, and then I'll send it out, and I embargo it until the following Thursday, and that's when it appears in print in Lakota Times. And that's to say, on Wednesday is when I'll release it on Facebook and UClick and some of the other places, Twitter and whatnot. And so actually, the cartoons you're seeing are actually a week old, but the nature of the business, I guess. So it's almost like you gotta predict the future sometimes. So anyway, these things have to be set up on, I do them on Photoshop, and I do them on a Wacom tablet, which is a screen, you draw on the screen itself. And before I used to do it in inks and hand color them, but now I do it all in Photoshop and send it out to whoever needs it, whoever wants it actually. So that's pretty much the process.
Wonderful. Well, we're going to have an opportunity to chat with you more about your process and about what kind of things inspire you and how you select some of that subject matter. If you're finished, then we'll move on to our next speaker.
Sure.
Okay. All right. Terrific. Thank you so much. We are also very pleased to have Ricardo Caté here today. Ricardo has been drawing the daily cartoon Without Reservations for the Santa Fe New Mexican since 2006. His wry and often poignant humor pokes fun at both the white man and the Indian. Ricardo follows the ways of his Kewa Pueblo heritage and teaches on the reservation. He has 3 children, and he lives in the Santo Domingo Pueblo in New Mexico. Let's welcome Ricardo, and we look forward to seeing his work.
All right, good afternoon. So I guess the same thing. I can go through the slides, but yeah, I've been drawing since for the Santa Fe New Mexican since 2007. But before that, I've been drawing since I was about 10 or 11 in grade school with my best friend David, who we found ourselves separated in grade school. He was in one class, I was in another, the whole day, and And so we started drawing cartoons to each other about what was happening in our respective classrooms. And instead of switching notes like other kids did, David and I were switching cartoons. And so I had accumulated a whole stack. About that time, my dad was in the hospital. He had broken his back in like 3 places. And that night I would rub my mom's feet, and she was always crying because, you know, dad was the moneymaker, and so she missed him a lot, and he was in the hospital for over a year. And then I realized I had these cartoons in my room that I had drawn that day. And so I would take one out like each night, and she would read it and she would start laughing instead of crying. And so that's kind of how I started. And I had kind of realized the impact that cartoons had on people to make them feel good. And so I just continued on throughout high school years, and in the Marine Corps even. Drew a couple of cartoons for Stars and Stripes, and then college. And I attended. At age 40, I decided to go back to school, and with my 3 kids in tow, I'm a single father, and I would be in the class, and my kids would be with me. And the last class I took that enabled me to graduate, I needed 1 more credit hour. And what allowed me to do that was to be on the local the school newspaper. And I wound up drawing a cartoon called, I was at Fort Lewis in Durango, Colorado, and I drew a comic strip called Fort Leisure, which depicted college life. And then a neighboring tribe, the Southern Ute tribe in Ignacio, asked me to draw a cartoon for their newspaper, for their local tribe. The Southern Ute Drum is what the paper was called. And I said, sure. And so they asked if I could draw them as native, the characters as native, which I had never done. Up until that point, all my cartoons were pretty much generic. They were just generic. They weren't native or white or anything like that, even though it was on white paper. But anyway, I came up with these characters, and I struggled for a week trying to figure out, you know, how do I draw these natives without offending anyone? And so there was really no way to draw natives like from the Old West. And so I drew them, yeah, with the feathers and the loincloth and whatnot. I had originally tried drawing Pueblo style, but because there are a lot of Pueblos that are very conservative, I didn't want to step on anyone's toes by depicting them in a way that shouldn't be depicted. And so I started drawing them as Plains natives. And so the only thing was that I was able to give the characters, well, they're more intelligent than their counterparts, like the chief and the general. The chief always has the upper hand in the discussion with the general, who happens to look like Custer. And so so that's kind of how I started out. I started out with just like Marty. He really enjoys cartoons, and I know how he feels, because I really enjoy drawing cartoons, and I'm like, go back to age 10 or 11 when I'm drawing. And originally when I first started this, oh, let me finish real quick. After that newspaper, and after I graduated in 2006, I came back to Santa Fe, and a year later I wound up on this in the Santa Fe New Mexican, which is started drawing for them. I draw daily cartoon for them, and it's from Monday to Saturday, so 6 days a week. I have to draw for them every single day. I have to come up with a different cartoon, and to date I have over 6,000 cartoons. And then the readership consists of 70,000 readers, most of them non-native. About 80% of them are non-native. And so but I originally set out to be that 10-year-old or 11-year-old and just enjoy drawing However, things changed a lot for me when I went up to Standing Rock, and I was up there. I arrived on August 25th, and I left on December 2nd. So I spent for almost 5 months up there, and yeah, that September 3rd, it was a Saturday, it was a Labor Day weekend, and that's when they set the dogs free on all these water protectors, and I was there, and I drew a couple of cartoons from that, and I posted it, and then there was a lot of likes, and so I started drawing things that I saw each day while I was at camp, or when we were up in Bismarck, or wherever we were supposed to be, and even the helicopters and the planes that were circling the camp every day. I try to depict every aspect of life up there, and people started sharing them, and I kind of liked that I had that role, that the role that my cartoons played while I was up there. And so I noticed after that my cartoons were a little different. They had more of a bite to them, because I experienced what this dominant culture is capable of, and so now it's like I said, my cartoons have a little more bite to it, and they've been how do I say, progressing, and I've been trying to improve on them as time goes, and I just enjoy doing it. And it turns out in 2012, 10, when I was selected for tribal duty, and it's like a year-long duty, and so I had to quit my teaching job, and by the time I came back, I had been replaced, and so my book had come out a year later, and so ever since then, I've just been drawing the cartoons, and for either for the paper or coming out with calendars each year, selling at markets and whatnot. And so I still enjoy coming up with cartoons each day. My deadlines are on Thursdays. And so they appear the following week, Monday through Saturday. So I have a little window, a 4-day window, like something that maybe just happened that I could, while it's still on people's mind, they'll read about it that Monday. There have been a couple of times when something happens, like a slap from the Oscars. I know that's not really no biggie, but the cartoon I posted on Facebook, well, my editor saw it, and he said, we got to print this tomorrow. And so I have the ability to be able to draw something, and it appears the very next day on the opinions page in the newspaper. So so yeah, so far I'm enjoying this gig that just kind of fell into my lap. So we can go through the slides now if you want. Oh, okay. So this is one of my first cartoons that appeared maybe the 5th year I drew, so maybe around 2012 or 11. And this is just the fact that, a lot of natives don't celebrate July 4th, because that's not really our holiday. And besides, like the chief says, you guys are still here, so it's not our Independence Day. So I guess I kind of, my cartoons already had a little bite to it, but that was based on my personal experiences, racism as I was going to college, or even in the Marine Corps. It was pretty bad in the military. And so, yeah, some of my, I wouldn't call it anger, but some of the issues or some of those things I went through come out in my comics. So, yeah, next one. Next slide. This was about 3 years ago when they were toppling statues, and right here in Santa Fe, the obelisk that was downtown was taken down as well, kind of in this fashion, with the rope pulling on it, and it fell. And there was a lot of people on either the side of the argument. They should come down, they shouldn't come down. And as a cartoonist, I think I should present both sides of the argument. And on such issues as this one. And so, yeah, the chief, of course, he doesn't want that statue, but the general, it's a statue of him, so he definitely wants it up. And so it's just a simple cartoon. It's not for or against, what was going on, but a lot of times I just point out, people's reaction or what's happening at that time, as far as whatever's going on. Same thing up at Standing Rock. So. Right. Oh, this was a slap, the one that editor liked, because Chris Rock was the zebra in that cartoon. Okay, you guys know. Hi. Oh, Madagascar. That was my daughter. Thank you, Amber. And and I realized that Will Smith was the fish in. Okay, she's gone. I could have drawn Will Smith as a fish, but this was just as this is good. And again, nothing saying I was for or against what happened, just the fact that it happened. Okay. Like I said, a lot of my cartoons are based on real life, and so this was March of 2010 when the doctor diagnosed me with type 2 diabetes, and I had been showing symptoms, and after a while I decided to go see the doctor, and he's on his chair with the wheels, and he wheels over to me, which is not a very good indication, but he comes up to me and he says, "Mr. Caté, you have type 2 diabetes." And I looked at him and I said, "Oh yeah, well, you have cooties." And he made a face and he goes, "Well, I'm going to ask you a series of questions, and just give me your best answer." I said, "Okay." And the very first question he asked was, "Diabetes, does obesity run in your family?" And I said, "No, nobody runs in my family." And he says, "What are you doing? Why are you making fun of this, situation?" I said, "Well, you just gave me the worst news of my life, and this is how I deal with it, with humor." And so after maybe a couple of days, maybe feeling sorry for myself and being angry at the fact that I had diabetes, and it's almost to me at the time was a death sentence. But yeah, I decided instead 2 weeks later, a few days later, I came up with 2 weeks worth of cartoons about diabetes, and they ran in the paper for 2 weeks, and people wrote, and they were so happy that that I had drawn these cartoons, because they said, "Oh, that's what I'm going through, and thank you for making it a little easier for me to handle." And so a lot of it was pretty cool that I was able to do that, help people, and help myself as well. So but this was just I think like 4-5 months ago when Trump came back in the news, because he was running. Supposedly he's running again in a couple of years, and it's just like the coronavirus, he just wouldn't go away. He just keeps popping up, still saying that he lost the election and whatnot, which is okay. I guess he's entitled to his opinions and stuff, but just as a cartoonist, I actually missed the guy as a cartoonist, but that's it. So I just decided to draw him again one more time. So can of gasoline. Before, during the pandemic, it was a roll of toilet paper. He's kneeling and asking for a hand in marriage with a gas can. But a couple of years ago, it was a roll of toilet paper when we had that shortage. And so I try to keep up, with the times. And so that's what that is. Go ahead. Super Bowl. This was actually a very old cartoon back in 2000. In fact, it's in my book, so it's before 2012. But because of the Super Bowl and the hype and all that, I came out with this again that week of the Super Bowl this year. And I don't know, maybe I was just sad that Dallas was playing. No, sorry. But yeah, I just come up with this every year, and I just decided to paint it this year. So, and that's why that's a little bit. Go ahead. This was just, I wish there were more characters. I had more time to draw, paint more of the women out there from different countries. And this is based on Ukraine's national flag with the wheat and the blue sky. And this is my tribute to the people of Ukraine. And lately, well, this year, I'm serving again in tribal, having tribal duties this year. And so I'm not on Facebook, or I can't draw or paint as much as I can. I can only keep up with the cartoons that are in the paper. In fact, 3 times I've had to have reruns sent because I've been so busy all year. And so if I wasn't so busy, I would have included maybe 100 more characters out there. But this is something I posted. It was a couple of days after the war had started. So. Of course, the commanders, you know, I pictured, you know, them cheering, "Go Commanders," and someone mishears them, someone wearing a helmet, he hears "Go Commando." And so, yeah, day after it was announced, the new name, yeah, this was my prediction of what was happening at that time. So, yeah. Oh, that was it. Yeah, and so I used to love to do strips. In fact, when David and I, back in 10th and 11th, when we were 10 and 11, we would draw a whole page, like on a notebook page like this. We would draw a whole strip of cartoons of what was happening. But now, since I drew for the New Mexican, and I have this one space, I am now just drawing a single panel. And I first struggled with putting everything in one single panel and trying to tell a story in just one panel. But now it's become more natural for me, and it's not as hard as it was in the beginning. But I still would like to do cartoon strips, and hopefully right now I'm in the works of maybe to do what do you call it, animation. And I have a few pretty good ideas for animation. And so my friend Wes Studi, he wants to voice the chief. And so I don't know. It'd be kind of weird with the chief with Wes Studi's voice, but that'd be kind of cool. But anyway, that's I haven't really switched to the tablet or anything else. I'm still pen and paper. I just discovered watercolors, and so I've been meddling with watercolors, and so I'm trying to come out with this book before the Gathering of Nations. I've been invited next week on the 29th and 30th. I've never been there, but the organizers invited me so I could have a booth, and so I'm trying to come out with this little booklet, Powwow for Dummies, and I'm working on all the images for that book, and I'm hoping to come out with that weekend. And so it'll all be in watercolor, and so yeah, just enjoying this life as a cartoonist.
Thank you so much, Ricardo. So many great thoughts listening to both of you about the way in which satire and humor is interrogating different issues in Indian country. You know, the gallows humor of talking about your diabetes, and you know how that might speak to other communities that experience, you know, those types of issues, or you know, thinking through maybe what things require some anticipation of privacy, and like you talked about, Ricardo, your, you know, the conservative nature a bit of your tribe, and so trying to figure out how to couch your work in a way that respects that culture. Also really struck by Marty's discussion of kind of world affairs and how these things speak to him, and how his own culture and his own take might be impacting his thoughts on world affairs. And that leads us nicely into a conversation. What I'm going to do is just pose a few questions. I have a couple questions that I want both of you to answer, but let's start with Marty. Your work often has what I see as a distinctive geopolitical emphasis. So I've heard lots of conversations about your pieces, like Governor Kristi Noem. I know a lot of people were talking about that piece, and up to discussions of some of your pieces on Putin. And I'm just wondering if there are ways in which you view your work as kind of a conversation between Indian country and maybe how the rest of the country is viewing world affairs. Because it does make me think that there kind of is a conversation going on there. And as a follow-up to that, is there a difference in audience or approach when your subject matter is about international events versus domestic? So what do you think about that? Is there a conversation going on between Indian country and?
Well, first off is that I'm not a spokesman for Native Americans. You know, all I could do is speak for myself as a Native American man. I can't even speak for Native women. You know, so I put across my own point of view. You know, I'm not an elected official. Nobody chose me to be the voice of Native America. But I, as a Native American man, have an opinion on the world. And if I feel that there's something that needs to be commented on what's going on in Ukraine, you know, then I bring that to my readers, you know, and basically I do these things for the Lakota, for the Oglala Lakota, you know, and so it's geared strictly to them. You know, my audience beyond that is, like I say, it's always a bonus to have. You know, people appreciate my work. You know, I'm flattered by that, but I just do these for my people, you know, and I really feel that, you know, a lot of my contemporaries on my reservation, you know, we have interest in what's going on in the world, because consequently it's going to affect us. You know, many years ago, my uncle had went to World War II to fight the Germans. And he always thought that if he didn't fight them over there, he'd have to fight them over here. And that's the reason why he went over there, you know. And even then, you know, they had a view of the whole world because we knew it affected us in the end.
Do you have a different approach if you're writing about something domestic or something that's close to home? And I'm curious about what kind of feedback you get from your community. You know, I imagine you might have gotten a lot of feedback after your cartoon about Governor Noem.
Well, I get some feedback, positive and negative. You know, I've been in newspapers for years, so consequently, you always have a buffer between you and your readership.
Mm-hmm.
You know? And so even back in the old days, you know, had unlisted phone numbers and things like that, and you know, because there are times where people will threaten you, you know, and you have to take these things seriously. But by and large, you know, the fan base I have now are, you know, really great people. You know, when I'm on Facebook, I choose who can see my work. You know, I don't let people in who are racist or trolls. You know, I get rid of them because I just want people that like my stuff. You know, I don't want other people to see it. I mean, if they have hate in their hearts, I don't want them to see my work. You know, so there's always that. You know, who I want to share with. You know.
Wonderful, thank you. So Ricardo, a good following of your readers, as you mentioned, are non-native. Are there ways in which your work is sort of intentionally challenging or trying to educate non-native views or stereotypes of Indian country? And do you see satire of those stereotypes as a way to sort of invert that? What's your approach to that? Oh, you're muted still.
Okay. Yeah. I guess because of the readership when I first started, and I realized that Actually, when the cartoons first came out, I didn't realize who was going to be reading the cartoons. So I got 168 pages of hate mail when the cartoon first came out, 2007. And they were saying, this cartoon's not drawn well. This cartoon is not funny. This cartoon is racist. And there was like 20 different reasons why these people wrote. And so I went and answered them with one universal letter. And I said, I'm sorry you feel that way about this cartoon. My name is Ricardo Caté. I'm from Santo Domingo. I'm Native American. This is how I see the world. And most of them wrote back and they said, oh, you're Native. Well, I guess it's okay then. Which was kind of weird for me because I guess they had assumed the whole time that I was non-Native. But that kind of made me feel good because then I thought, wow, that's kind of what my dad told me when I first went to boarding school up in Colorado, and I was going to be thrown into this dominant world. And after growing up on the res, and so I was at age 15, he tells me, you know, I know you're scared, and but here's the thing: everything you need to know about white people are in movies, are in books, are in cassettes. That was way back when. And you can read about them and learn about the white person, but your weapon is they know nothing about you. So that's your weapon. And it made me feel, for some reason, that made me feel a lot better. And so it's, I don't use my cartoon as a weapon so much as I use it to maybe shock people into that one cartoon that I always have, and it was just back here. It's where the father and the son are. The father has his hand outstretched and showing his son this scenery, mountain with the mountains and trees, and he goes, "Someday, son, none of this will be yours." And so that particular cartoon, first of all, this one, yeah, this cartoon particularly that was hanging in my shop when I first opened it in Santa Fe. People will come in and first they'll go ah ha ha, then they'll go ah, and then it made them angry, and then it made them sad. And so you're lucky to get one depiction of feelings from a picture. But this particular cartoon, three different ways of looking at it, and so I always liked that, and so I knew that drawing cartoons in a particular way, or addressing a particular Native issue in such a way where it kind of comes at him from a different direction, whether it's land grabbing or treaties not being honored, or even the mascot thing. I try to come at it from a different angle, trying to address it. I guess now that I think of it, through the Native lens, but I too do not speak for any Native tribe, or I just draw for myself. But at the same time, a lot of Natives they can relate to how I'm feeling, and I do know that I'm drawing a lot to non-Natives, which is pretty. It's pretty cool because now I can take something that has to do with mascots, and people are yelling at each other and both at each other, which doesn't really accomplish anything. But here I can draw something with humor, laced with humor, and they can actually sit down and discuss it afterwards. And so, I had an interview with a magazine, Vogue or Forbes, and they asked me if I ever censor myself, and I told them yes, every single time I draw something, every single time, because I could easily offend every non-Native that reads my cartoon very easily. But why would I want to do that? I have this tool that I can teach people, non-Natives especially, about these issues. And so I always keep that in mind when I'm drawing. But at the same time, I always try to have fun at this, and it's just like I said, my cartoon's evolving, and so it's going to continue to evolve, and I'm just going to see where this takes me.
It seems like humor is a bit of a superpower in this genre. I mean, obviously, neither one of you are afraid of criticism because it comes with the field. You know, you have to expect that you're going to get haters and you're going to have people that disagree with you. But curious about just personally, like this is posed first to Marty and then to Ricardo, but did people in your family or your friends say growing up that you were funny or that you had a satirical way of looking at life? Or was this something that was kind of reinforced over and over again, that you had this kind of humor and this different way of looking at life? Marty?
Well, humor has always been there. I think it's even my ancestors, probably crack jokes at the custard at Little Bighorn, It's just always there. Whenever some transgression or something bad happens, there's always somebody that says something funny. That's just the nature of Native Americans, I believe. And so our humor is kind of rough at times. And like Ricardo says, if you don't edit it, you can insult people with it. But at the same time, it's just something we use, to lighten the situation. And, growing up, of course, my uncles drew cartoons of each other, and my uncles, they're great figures. They served in World War II, in Korea. They had been all over the world. They've been, these great heroes of mine. And I used to see them drawing cartoons of each other, and they'd put them on their walls and they'd laugh about it and things like that. So I always thought, hey, that's great. That's a great medium, And so I was tried to draw cartoons like that, just to make my uncles laugh, and through the years, it's just something I drew for my cousins as well, just to poke fun at different things that are going on and whatnot. And through the years, it just kind of developed, always just kind of like a side thing, a hobby, like as it were. So when I did get into high school, I started drawing for the newspaper there, the high school newspaper. And then after that, I left there and I went to Colorado Institute of Art in Denver, Colorado, and I studied there for 2 years. And when I left there, I went into television as assistant to an art director. So I kind of went off a different direction and started getting into news cycles and whatnot. And through the years, working through commercial printers and whatnot, I got into weekly newspapers, and all the while I did an editorial cartoon, and they'd pay me like $20-$25, but that'd be enough to take the wife and kids out to a movie or something, So it's kind of always a side thing, But I keep going back to why I started, and I just wanted to make these guys I really respected, my uncles, just have a little smile, laugh, And if I could do that, then, that was empowering, It's such a fantastic medium.
It's often a deeply personal reason, isn't it, that gets us into something that we become passionate about. I'm curious about your background too, Ricardo. Did you have people in your family, or was humor a big part of you being able to express yourself candidly, or was that something, a role that you took on as kind of the humorist, the class clown, that type of person?
Yeah, well, as a lot of people are familiar with Pueblo culture, they know we have a society for clowns that are responsible for keeping our people uplifted and laughing, and so it's a huge part of my culture. And also growing up, with my dad, he was pretty crazy. He served in Vietnam, and we would go out driving. I'm like 7 or 8, and he'll be driving, and he'll be taking me into town. And as soon as we take off, I'll go, Dad, can I turn on the radio? I'll reach for the radio, and he'll go, no, we don't have enough gas in the car. And then I'll think about it, what he just said. Wait a second, he would make all these little comments that are underlined with humor. And it was until years later that, you know, I would think about back in those times and realize that he had just this dry wit. And I think he passed it on to me because, you know, I would just, um, I guess he was just a funny guy in the family. He used to make jewelry, Indian jewelry, and he didn't want us to learn how to make jewelry. He didn't want to show us because he wanted us to use our brains rather than keeping on with the traditional pottery or jewelry making of my people. And he said, enough people make jewelry. I need you to use your brains to figure out what your niche in life is going to be. And so I'm glad he told me that, because that's where I find myself today. But I wasn't familiar with jewelry making, but he was. And so one morning at the Indian market, he wanted to go to sleep. And so I was in charge of the table, and I didn't know what all these gems other than turquoise and hisi, but he had other gems that he had worked with. And there was this one particular 20 strand thing. And this dude comes up to me and he says, "Excuse me, is this azurite?" And I didn't want to wake my dad, who had just fallen asleep. And but he kept asking, insisting. And so I finally woke my dad, and he was pretty irritated that I woke him up. But he opens one eye and he says, "Yeah." And the guy goes, "Is this azurite?" And my dad responds without missing a beat. He goes, "You bet your azurite." And the guy laughs. They both laugh, and I'm shocked at what had just transpired. And so he puts the strands down, he walks away, and I asked, "Dad, what did you just do?" He kind of just shrugs it off. But a few minutes later, that guy comes back and he buys that necklace. And that was my introduction and how powerful humor can be. So I get a lot of it from my dad, and of course from my people, and a lot of things that society does, I simply take and put it on paper, which has never been done before here in the Pueblo culture, I think, except for maybe Zuni. But yeah, I found that it came easily to me to draw native life based on my experiences.
That dovetails really nicely into the next question. We're going to ask a couple more questions, and then we're going to open it up to the rest of the guests in the Zoom room. But how do you think that the genre of cartoons as a medium is suited for our political times? It seems like you're both touching on the fact that this humor can kind of allow you to say things maybe in a convincing way that might not be accepted as easily in other platforms. But what about this genre do you think makes it really an effective medium for right now? Marty, you can go first.
Well, if we look at the history of it, you know, it's basically an American invention, you know, the editorial cartoon. In fact, Benjamin Franklin did a political cartoon, the one with the snake all cut up, you know, United We Stand or something like that. I can't remember what it was. But anyway, that was attributed to be one of the first political cartoons. So it's kind of an American tradition. And in those days, it was aimed at the illiterate, you know, because there was a large segment of the population who could not read. So consequently, through the years, it still had a popularity. You know, if you look at the English language, the written word, it is a series of characters, you know, A, B, C, D, whatever. And those are pictures that are put into an order that we can read. So you can read a book and column. So we're understanding graphically about what our eyes are seeing and going into our mind. And so when you look at that in cartooning, you're just marrying the two principles together, the word and photographs or pictures. And so when you marry those two together, you're able to convey a message, you know, and since it's half an illustration, you don't have to write so much. And so you can get to people quicker. You know, they could just look at an editorial cartoon, understand the issue a lot quicker than they could if they had to read an editorial, you know, 500 words, 600 words, you know. And so it's real useful in that effect. You know, and I always believe in the truth. You know, the truth is beautiful. And some people think it's ugly. Some people try to hide it. There are some people that will even kill to keep it hidden. So as a journalist, the job is to bring the truth to people and let them decide. And consequently, a cartoon takes the edge off the truth. You know, if the truth is better, or the truth is sharp, then the humor will take that edge off and still get the point to the reader.
That's a great observation. So reframing the question a little bit for Ricardo, do you think that that as a medium, cartoons allow you to reach people or move minds, or maybe have a slightly more effective stance on things that are very difficult, intractable issues? What's your experience with that, and what's kind of the feedback that you get when you deal with some of the tougher subjects?
Oh, yeah, I of course it get a lot more backlash, but man, Marty nailed it. That answer. It really takes a edge off, you know, with humor. So I don't know if I can top that answer, but that was really good. All I know is I've received a lot of backlash since I started addressing a lot more of the current issues. Like I said, ever since Standing Rock, because there's fracking going on in my backyard, and in Chaco Canyon from the lands of my ancestors, and so I found that my cartoons in trying to address those, they really help me get my point across as to how the anger and the concern that I'm feeling for whatever cause that I'm trying to back. And so I think right now I still do draw a lot of try to draw a lot of the funny stuff, because it is in the paper and it is called the funny page. But every once in a while, especially on social media, I'll go and draw those cartoons that are a lot more serious and have a lot more bite to it. And so I'm just now experiencing that. And so, but I feel like that, as the saying goes, a picture is worth 1,000 words. And so I'm in this industry where I'm actually seeing that I'm able to, in one single panel, say a lot more than most people are saying in 1,000 words. A lot of times they don't say anything; they're just talking. But a single cartoon can actually just say a lot. And so so it's just now what I say. I'm just now experiencing, and like I said, my cartoons are evolving, and so I'm find myself in strange waters sometimes, because I set out just to be a funny cartoonist. And so again, I want to see where this takes me.
That's wonderful. I'm going to just pose one more question to both of you, and then we're going to open it up for individual audience questions. Of course, cartoons have been around for a good long while, and you both have spoken so eloquently about the political function of them, the way to sort of interrogate some issues and maybe taking the sting out of it a little bit. There's always been for many, many decades a fascination with comics and other types of art, comic books. And I think it's experiencing kind of a new energy that goes along with graphic novels. There's a lot of libraries now and librarians that have collecting efforts in zines and graphic novels and other types of art that dovetail with this idea of satire and comics. And it's gotten a lot more attention too, just in terms of some of the events that are available now. You can go to an Indigenous Comic-Con. In your gentleman's backyard is that great bookstore, Red Planet, in Albuquerque, that has some really amazing stuff. I'm just kind of curious how you think, what this moment is that we're experiencing. Although your work has been around for a good long while, there does seem to be a lot of fascination with this type of work and genre. Not only is something to be enjoyed, but another really scholarly area. People are starting to really collect and pay attention to it. And how has that changed over time? Do you see a difference in sort of the prominence or the influence of this type of work? Marty, what do you think?
Oh, you're talking, of course, about graphic novels and graphic novel approach. It's been around for years, but it is getting a lot of popularity. A lot of movies are being made from graphic novels, and so there's a huge fan base behind these readerships. And I think part of that is that you have something tangible. We have computers and iPads and whatnot, and telephones, but they need to be powered up, and you got to have service somewhere. And there's all these requirements you have to have before you can enjoy it. But a book and a graphic novel, you just open it up. So the younger readers are coming to that, and you're able to put more detail and more background information, background stories. And so when these people tell stories through graphic novels, they're richer than what you get encapsulated in a movie show or a TV show or, what you'd see online, and so that too is appealing. There's been a steadily decline in readership as far as books go, but you've seen graphic novels rise in popularity. A lot of that's attributed to the manga out of Asia, where Captain Superman and DC and these guys, they'll publish 400,000, copies in a run. And in a manga series, they're talking millions, 12 million, 14 million, so the readership there is great. And they're seeing that kind of coming here for whatever reason. Maybe a cultural shift, maybe the World Wide Web, maybe who knows. Whoever figures that out will get the richest. But in any case, I see that it's going to grow even more as things go on, and it looks like Hollywood and television, they're looking more to graphic novels to mine for stories because they know they're rich, and they also know that they have their built-in fan base.
Yeah, thoughts on that, Ricardo?
I'm on come at it from a different angle. Come at it as a nerd. I've been reading comics all my life, Mad Magazine, what's his name? Don Martin is one of my favorite cartoonists, Al Jaffe, and then Beetle Bailey. The big noses on my natives are based on Andy Cap, without the eyes and all that. That's a tribute to my dad, and just reading all the old Harvey comic books, Richie Rich, and all that. And I'm just glad that's finally happening, because I'm answering, like I said, as from a nerd standpoint, thinking, why aren't other people reading comic books when I was growing up? Instead, we were just this small group of like me and David, and Eloise and Jamie, we used to trade comic books, because my mom would go to the grocery store. This is when I was when they were 10 cents each. She'd bring back a stack of comic books, and then that's the first thing I would go through, and then I would exchange with my other friends, and but people thought we were very strange, very weird. And then I heard about Comic-Con about 25 years ago, and I was like, oh my gosh, I want to go to one of those things, but I didn't go till about 8 years ago. I was invited to a native Comic-Con here in Albuquerque, and I just recently came back from the big one in San Diego a few months back, and I just didn't know why it didn't happen sooner. This found fascination with comic books
It's definitely experiencing a moment, isn't it? Yeah, it's
yeah. And so it wasn't really for me. It wasn't like me. I've always been in this world of comic book fascination, and so for me, nothing has changed. The whole world has changed around me, and so it's kind of a different way for me because I am a nerd. I grew up as a nerd, and so I'll always be a nerd. So now being nerdish is cool, I guess. I don't know. I guess that's what. Yeah, I guess that's what happened. So that's my answer.
That's the smart guy. Cool. So we do have a question from the audience, and I'm going to open it up to you if anybody wants to raise their hand and actually ask a question directly. But it sort of relates to what Marty was just talking about, which is, were there any mainstream editorial cartoonists or other cartoonists that you liked in your youth, or that you felt that you were influenced by? And you did just touch on that a little bit, but maybe there were some other influences. Why don't you go first, Ricardo, and then we'll kick it back to Marty.
Oh, yeah, and I had mentioned Don Martin and Al Jaffe and Sergio Aragonis, but they all drew for Mad Magazine, and Crack Magazine wasn't as popular as Mad, so I didn't really read those. But of course, Charles Schultz, the simplicity of his cartoons, and a lot of people say my cartoons are pretty simple, and there's not a whole lot of detail in my cartoons. I just like getting the point across. I'm not too worried about the art part because I never went to art school or anything. This is just the cartoons that I drew the way I drew them as I was growing up, and so they're basic for me and my kids. My kids love reading my comics, and so let's see who else. Oh, of course, Bill Watterson. And I had a chance to meet Bill Watterson, I guess, when I was up in San Luis Obispo. And I was getting ready to get on the plane, and one of my hosts said, Bill Watterson lives in this town. And I was like, why didn't you tell me? I was there for like a whole week and a half. They could have told me like when I arrived, and then I could have tried to find him, even though he's very reclusive. But I think he would have want to talk to another cartoonist. But Bill Watterson, a huge fan. I'm a huge fan of Bill Watterson and Calvin and Hobbes. And so I'm actually working on this comic strip called Fifth Mesa, where there's a young Hopi boy living on Fifth Mesa, which doesn't really exist. And he lives in this small Pueblo type thing up on the mesa, and there's hardly any kids. And so his best friend is this tall coyote, and this vulture that's always trying to eat him, and this owl that gives him sound advice, and also this coiled up snake. You never see it. He's always coiled up. And I have these characters all set, but it's based on kind of off of Calvin and Hobbes, although Hobbes was imaginary, but this coyote is real. And so that's how big an influence Calvin and Hobbes has on me. And I'll probably introduce this cartoon strip in a couple of years. I'm still working on it, but yeah, I really enjoyed reading all those guys, and they have a profound influence on what I do now, and even the humorous part, just being able to look at the world the way that they did. It's just a great gift.
We have some related questions. So before we ask Marty to weigh in on that, maybe would Elias, would you like to read your question? If not, I can read it for you, but if Elias wants to pipe in.
Joy, you have to unmute her.
Oh, okay. Let's see, sorry.
Oh, I don't think she's with us now.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, that would explain it. Well, so April, same for you. If you wanted to pipe in, you're welcome to do it. Otherwise I can, they're all sort of related questions. They're interested in influence. Okay, I guess I'm just going to phrase it for you. So Elias says that they're interested in your influences, not only in comics, but if there was artists in general that have greatly influenced your art. Or if there were styles or types of topics from those artists that you like to cover. And then April notes that she greatly appreciates your humor, and cartoonist Gary Larson from The Far Side. She's wondering if there's any influence from drawings or cartoons for either one of you. Marty.
Okay. Well, my influences go back to I grew up in the 70s, the 60s. So, you know, there's cartoonists, so Wally Wood, which is John Severin, Richard Corbin, Frank Rosetta. You know, all these are illustrator type artists that are comic book artists. And I grew up exposed to them. Joe Kubert, Russ Heath, people of that generation that were doing comics, you know. And you know, as far as Gary Larson's goes, you know, I like his humor, you know, I really like it, but I don't draw like him, or I don't get any influence of drawing from him, but I really like his humor. He's really great at that. You know, consequently, you come up with your own style as you work in this, you know, drawing. And as you practice and practice, all of a sudden you find you have a style, you know, whether or not it's based on anybody, that's purely by chance. You know, people say a lot of my stuff looks like R. Crumb, but, you know, I wasn't exposed to R. Crumb when I was young. You know, consequently, I would say Wally Wood was more of an influence, or John Severin was probably more of an influence. But you know, those are highly technical artists.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
so they worked in ink, and that was consequently my medium.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was going to ask you about R. Crumb too, but I don't know if artists like being compared to other artists, but I'm sure some of that is just fortuitous, right? You know, there's a way of drawing that might have some similarities to other artists.
Absolutely. You know, there's always this Eurocentric view that you put a label on them, then put them on a shelf. You know, so it's easy to say, oh, this guy is from this school, or this guy's from that school. You know, and consequently, it's easier to deal with their work. You know.
Judy asks, can both of you comment on how character operates in your comics, inspiration and working methods?
Okay, I guess, like I said, the chief and the general, like in that Independence cartoon, I found later on that I'm glad I never really gave the chief a name. He has a generic name, the chief, and the general also has a generic name, which is the general, even though he looks like Custer. And it turns out later that the chief is basically the spokesperson for natives, and then the general is a spokesperson for I guess I keep saying the dominant culture, but yeah, that's how it turned out. And so I didn't set out for that to happen. It was kind of a fluke and all. And so so yeah, the character titles, even though there might actually only 2 characters that have any names at all. None of my characters, and I just recently introduced about 7 years ago women into my cartoon, where they were all just men. And I noticed, and someone asked, how come there's no women in the cartoons? I was like, oh, okay. And so I started drawing them as well. And so but also to answer the thing about Gary Larson, I'm sorry I missed out, you know, Gary Larson, naming him as one of my influences, but he was, especially when I found out that I was going to be doing a single panel cartoon, which is his style. And so I had to, you know, buy all the books on Gary Larson. I read them, and he's just the master doing cartoon and just the one panel and being able to put all that stuff in the one panel. And so yeah, I really appreciate his humor. I love how he looks at the world just simply and just so yeah, he's one of my influences. But like Marty, I too only have Beetle Bailey. Mort Walker was my huge influence growing up reading the comics. So the creator Beetle Bailey was my big influence. And so but anyway, there you go.
Any comment on that, Marty, about how character plays a role in your work?
Well, the cartoon strips and the gag cartoons have characters, but the editorial cartoons, those are based on real people.
Mm-hmm.
And, consequently, they're characters as well. Some very comical, some not. But like the G's cartoon was based on my young family back then when my daughter was a baby, and the Res Dogs is kind of like me, like I have a dog and we don't always see eye to eye sometimes, but it's a funny dog. And the other one, Tabloka, that's just kind of like a Western history. So when I read Western history and I see something funny, or I think it's funny or ironic, I'll put it in a cartoon, And mostly it's to make fun of these anthropologists or paleontologists or, archaeologists, and so show the foibles of a lot of things they write as fact, when a lot of it's just assumption. Yeah, so that's kind of the way the characters work.
So Chad Smith asks to both guests, how far are you comfortable in addressing national and international issues like Russia and Ukraine? Ricardo?
I guess I'm okay with it, addressing anything that's happening worldwide, as long as I have all the information on it and not just from social media either, but from newspapers and whatnot. I want to make sure I know all the points going in before drawing anything, because then if I get it wrong, then I basically just make a fool out of myself. And so which actually kind of happened recently, I have to say it. I drew a cartoon with it's over here somewhere. Oh, here it is, right here. I drew this, posted on social media, and it's Joe Biden with the bird on his, supposedly pooped on his thing, and the night before, Gilbert Gottfried that passed
away. You're cutting out a little bit. We're having a hard time.
Sorry. Okay. Well, I drew Jeffrey. I drew Gilbert Gottfried as Garrett from You're still cutting out. Yeah. Well, you can see the cartoon, and I got it wrong because it never was bird poop. I found out later. And so basically, as a cartoonist that draws about current events, you hate to get something wrong like that, even as small a detail as that. And so if I'm going to draw something about international issues, then I hope to be comfortable enough that I have the knowledge about it. So that's the big thing for me.
Well, that makes sense. So I think, we have just a few more minutes left. I want to be conscious of everybody's time, but we have about 5 minutes left. And if there are any other individual questions, feel free to either unmute yourself or pop it in the chat session. Thank you.
So beautiful. What a wonderful, what I did see was just wonderful.
Yeah, this is being taped, and you'll be able to see additional information in the slideshow as well. There's contact information for each artist.
Great.
And there's websites outlining their work as well. So you'll have different ways to intersect with their work. Questions for the artists?
Just real quick, I can see if either of us are mentoring youth. I speak at a lot of schools, and I came out with this COVID coloring when people are in quarantine. I pass this book along, and it's just a simple coloring book about the pandemic and some of the rules and stuff that kids should follow. And so yeah, I speak a lot to like little schools here and there, you know, especially around the state of New Mexico. So just answering that question that popped up.
Well, fantastic. Let's be sure to give a round of applause and appreciation with our icons. Excuse me, for our two artists. And you will be able to see this presentation later and ways that you can intersect with their work and reach out to the artists. But I'm so honored and want to thank you both once again for a lively discussion and for sharing your work with us. And I couldn't be more excited that this type of work is really getting extra attention right now, which it really does deserve. So thank you both so much. And thank you all for coming. We hope to see you again soon. Pamela Peters, do you have any announcements about upcoming events or anything else that you would like to draw a close to the event?
I just want to say thank you, everyone, for taking the time this afternoon to attend our event. We do have 2 more events next week. If you go to our webpage at aisc.ucla.edu, go into our events drop-down menu, you will see events that we will be holding weekly. And once again, I want to thank you all, and this will conclude our event for this afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you both. Thank you, Marty, so much. And thank you, Ricardo.